This is, I believe it's Chapel 82 that we've done, dating all the way back to when, COVID hit. So 5+ years and 82 chapels. And, for those of you, I'm not sure, maybe Donnie might be the only one that's been on all 82, but they've all been, it's amazing how wonderful they've been in various ways, and the different guys that have contributed. But anyways, we think about the Curtin family. I know Kurtz was part of our small group, and he was lost and succumbed to ALS. That we were thinking of him over the many years, and what an inspiration that Kurtz was. So we think about Lisa and the rest of the family, and how ironic that Kurtz was at an event just a few days before his passing, still carrying on the ALS torch and doing what he can for that dreaded disease. So we miss him, as well as the number of others that we've had on our calls over the years that are no longer, but the hope that we share, that we know that they're with their Lord, and that's obviously in sadness, but in great encouragement as well. So as we want to introduce John Christiano, has been a huge part of the ministry over the years, dating all the way back to camps years and years ago. John, I think I probably did meet you at a camp back in the 80s. I know that you've been involved in the game, working for Captain Video there, Roger Nielsen, back in the Ranger days in the late 80s and early 90s. And, born and raised in Buffalo. You and Linda have 3 wonderful children. You're a grandfather. You had been a part of being a pro scout with the Buffalo Sabres, your beloved team there in your hometown. You were an assistant coach for a number of years with their farm team in Rochester. I know you're currently involved with high school hockey in an academy there, coaching, and won the state championship last year. So we've thought of you as well during your thyroid issues that you had gone through. And so anyways, we'll allow you to kind of lead us off in our opening prayer. Johnny.
Thanks, Ozzy. You're too kind there. Appreciate your friendship and all the times I've seen you on the road, whether I was coaching or scouting. It was always good to see you, smile on your face, and know that you're a brother. And I always appreciated that. Back in those days, the NHL was a little more closed, and there weren't as many chapels. And it's great to see some Christian guys on the road. But if we could just bow our heads and open up our session in prayer. Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity. We know you're with us. You are always with us, Lord, even when we're looking the other way. We thank you for your kindness, your grace, your mercy, and your love. Lord, we thank you for hockey ministries and all it's done this summer with the boys and the counselors and the volunteers and the doors that have been opened up at the different camps. And we thank you for all the boys that could attend and the parents that provided for them. And I just want to lift them all up now as they've gone home and now they go back to school and lead their lives. Lord, thank you again for Mark Curtin and his ministry to us, and his life that was well spent. We just thank you for all those things, Lord. We just ask that you bless our time together today and keep our eyes focused on you, the author and perfecter of our faith. And we just ask these things in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thanks, Johnny. And it just serves as a reminder. I know that when we lost Forbesy, that he had been really in close contact and was responsible for bringing Barry Melrose on board. And Barry was a huge part of our chapel programming here with the alumni, and we've kind of lost a little bit, gotten out of touch with Barry. And I know he's struggling, but we've had a hard time trying to connect with him. So if any of you guys do have an opportunity to connect, or let myself or Donnie know, that would be appreciated. So we just kind of unfortunately maybe assume that things aren't going great for him and his Parkinson's, but if you can pass that on, we'd really appreciate it. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, or one who will share and perhaps be interviewed by our faithful ambassador Donnie Lismer. But Rob Globke, Robbie, we want to welcome you to this morning's chapel. Want to thank you for being a part of it. I know you're on staff with Hockey Ministries now for 13 years. I go back and I think about you when you were probably playing in the Detroit area. You were an upcoming possible draft pick that I know the OHL was looking at. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, you would have been drafted by the Windsor Spitfires. And instead of coming to the OHL, you decided to go to Notre Dame University, which was probably a smarter move for those that are educated, and had your career there at Notre Dame. You were then drafted by the current Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, and enjoyed some time there in Florida, as well as playing in overseas in Europe. I know you live in the Chicago area. Not sure how a Detroit guy ends up in Chicago, but I know you're married to your wife, Elizabeth. You've got 4 kids, and you're currently served as the director of chapel ministries for Hockey Ministries. So we're really looking forward to hearing from you and your journey, what brought you to HMI, and all that's going on through camps, etc. So, thanks again, Robbie. As I look and see Billy, and I'm not sure if Bosch is on. I can't see everybody on my phone, but the connection, the former players that have gone on to be a part of HMI serving. Just want to thank you for your time and your dedication to doing what's best for those in the game. So, Rob Globke, welcome.
Thanks, Ozzy. And you end up in Chicago by marrying a Chicago girl. I mean, that's just, you do what the wife says. She said she wanted to be in Chicago. That's where we're at.
So, Rob, tell us about your family.
As Ozzy said, I'm married to Elizabeth. We met back in 8th grade and somehow stayed in connection and contact and end up getting married. We have 4 kids, as Ozzy said. I have an 11-year-old daughter named Mabel. I have an 8-year-old son named George, a 5-year-old son named Otto, and we'll just call her 8-month-old daughter named Doris. And that's my family.
You've been blessed, Rob, and that's beautiful. So growing up, you had 4 brothers. How was that?
It was good. It was good. Having 4 brothers always kept things lively in the house. Always had somebody to play, street hockey with. Always had somebody to wrestle with. Fixing things in the house, drywall, broken lights, you name it, we would break it. It was also good too. I'm the oldest of 5, and it was I ended up taking care of my brothers a lot. I don't know, maybe they would say it was a bad experience for them, but it was a good experience for me. It taught me how to grow up pretty quick. Just taking care of my four younger brothers. So, and we all played at various levels. My youngest brother ended up playing pro as well. But all of my brothers and I played at college hockey to some level. So it was a good experience growing up with my brothers.
So, so Rob, when did you begin thinking that hockey might be could be a career for you?
As Ozzy said, I was playing I was 14 years old, and I was playing AAA at the time, and that was things seemed to be getting even younger and younger. But you think back and you say 14, that's pretty young. But at that time, that's when I was starting to get notes or little calls from college coaches for what they could do. There's rules and restrictions on how young they can contact you, but they could contact you even at that age. And it was when I was 14, it was beginning to dawn in my mind that maybe it was a possibility that I could play. I played junior hockey at 15, and as Ozzy said, I played junior in the States, and then I was going to be drafted in the O. And unfortunately, a couple weeks before the draft, I decided that I was going to play for the U.S. development team, the national team there in Ann Arbor at the time, and some of the teams in the OHL weren't pleased that I pulled out a couple weeks before. But I was 16 years old, and at that point, it was pretty, I don't know, I should say clear. It wasn't clear, but I had a pretty good indication between the ages of 14 and 16 that maybe there was a future in hockey.
How did you feel then when you were drafted by Florida?
I felt good. It was a weird feeling though, Don. I was like a borderline first rounder, second rounder, and there was hope, there was talk. My agent was telling me that maybe I could go in the first round, mid to late first round. And so it was a weird day. On top of that, my grandmother had died a couple of days before the draft. So it was just a weird experience. I had a lot of mixed emotions. Obviously, I was disappointed. I slipped into the second round. I was a high second round pick. So I was a little disappointed in slipping from the first round, but I was obviously really excited to be drafted by Florida. So I don't know if Florida was too excited that they drafted me a couple years later, but I was excited at the time to be drafted and to be, kind of have my name with a team and to kind of start my pro career. So I tell kids at camps and various other people who will listen to me that Florida still owes me a ring today for the past couple of years because of all the draft picks I amassed by playing so poorly with them. So I feel like I've had a hand in building the roster to where it is today, and I still haven't gotten a ring. So I'm a little bit teed off by that, but
Well, maybe Baxi could help out there. He was a former coach, and he's got a lot of pull there, Baxi.
yeah, maybe Baxi's in my camp though. Like we kind of built to them, so where they are today.
That's
Poor
true.
coaching, poor playing.
Now, Rob, while you played and Ozzy sort of outlined your career for us, but you were a believer in Jesus at that time and through your career. How did that help you in hockey, and how did it impact your game and your life?
Um, well, I mean, it obviously, as a lot of the guys on this call know, it helps you because it gives you, it reorients your life to what truly matters. So, I mean, a lot of guys on this call, not fully everybody, but a lot of guys played at the highest level. A lot of guys played pro. We all played hockey to some extent. And if you've been in a room of guys, I would say the vast majority of them don't have that, as it says in Hebrews, the anchor of the soul. So a lot of guys are chasing after things that do not last, things that when the storm of life hits are going to toss you to and fro. And so being a Christian in that environment, it just gave me something, and it was a constant reminder. Christ and his graciousness in my life was constantly reminding me that he was better than any contract of money you can make, better than quote unquote making it. He was better than being with the boys out at the bar and all that stuff. So in that sense, he provided an anchor for my soul. My faith in Christ provided that. So, and you look in any locker room, and a lot of guys that I played with didn't have that. And even though they were having success on the ice, you could tell in their life that they were obviously missing something that they needed. I will say that made my life better, but it also, I mean, being a Christian, and the game has changed and it's continuing to change. I think there's growing acceptance to being a Christian or having faith. But even back when I played, it's probably worse for some of you older guys back when you played. Having a faith made it difficult in other ways too. You kind of, in a lot of ways, were on the outside looking in. You were the guy that's a little bit different. There was always guys asking like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? So it was hard being on the team and being one of the guys, but also standing up for what you knew to be right and in your faith. And in a weird way, your faith made it difficult, but it also made it so much better. So it's kind of a weird, it's hard to explain unless you lived it. I don't know if that answers your question, Don, but.
No, it does, Rob. It is a difficult balance for sure to achieve, and to show love for your teammates and care and concern, but at the same time, your mark is different, and so you need to really you need God's help in those situations. Rob, is there anything sort of about your career that you just maybe a highlight that comes to mind that you want to share with us?
There's a lot of lowlights, senior. You could look up on YouTube and find a lot of lowlights, a lot of turnovers, head down, getting smoked. A highlight. I mean, I only scored one goal in the NHL. I didn't really play that many games in the NHL, so scoring a goal was obviously a highlight. That's probably a great memory of mine. And then honestly, as probably you older guys could attest, some of my greatest highlights were just some of the times with the guys. The stories, the pranks, being on the road, doing all sorts of fun stuff with the guys, and just being with the guys in the room and stuff like that. Those are the things that I remember, not so much necessarily my playing, but just the various stories and pranks that guys pulled on me, especially my rookie year in San Antonio playing in the A. So I don't know if necessarily all those pranks are PG, they're not PG-13 or lower, senior. So can't share them all, but I got pranked by my roommate who was a veteran goalie. He was an old, grizzly goalie. And I can't believe I fell for this, but he pranked me. We were in Milwaukee, and he had a couple of other guys call our room. This is back in the day before like cell phones were a thing. And so they call the hotel room. I pick up, and the guy's like, yeah, this is so-and-so reporter from the Milwaukee Times. We'd love to, have you come down to the lobby and talk to us about your play, all this stuff. And I hung up. I'm like, that's not real. They don't want to talk to me. I was a fourth line rookie. Like they don't want to talk to me. And my roommate, the grizzled goalie, he's like, are you sure you think you should go down there? I'm like, nah, I'm not going down. And so again, the phone rings like 5 minutes later. This is the reporter. I'm down here. Are you coming? What are you doing? And of course I'm like, okay, I'll go down. I go down, and of course it's nobody. It's a bunch of guys laughing at me for thinking that I was having a reporter come and talk to me. So anyway, that was just one of the pranks of many that they pulled on me, making fun of the young rookie.
That sounds like something Billy Butters would do. But anyway, so Rob, now you're playing in Europe, and near the end of one of the seasons, you're in Germany, and you're on a bus, and it's late at night, and just share that whole experience with us. What was happening inside of you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had been connected to Hockey Ministries at this time for quite a while as a volunteer throughout my pretty much most of my playing career. I was a part of the ministry. And as Don said, towards the end of my playing days, I ended up overseas. I was playing in Germany at the time. And we were playing, our team was up in the Northwest, kind of near the Netherlands. And we were playing a road game in Munich. And so it's like one of the longest bus trips we had in playing in Germany. It was like a 12-hour bus ride when you added all up the stops and stuff. And after the game, I don't know, maybe it's different for you guys on the call, but when I played on long road trips, especially bus trips, there was a certain system that everybody abided by so that guys could sleep if they wanted to or lay down if they wanted to. So, I mean, it was like playing human Jenga or Tetris on the bus. Like some guys would be laying across the seats, some guys would be laying in the aisle, some guys would be laying like beneath the seats. Some guys would still like to sit up. Anyway, it was just everybody had a set place that you would go. I was laying on the bottom of the bus underneath the seats. That was kind of my spot. And I was listening, if you guys can remember, hopefully you can, like this was again before we had like cell phones with, you could easily just get your podcast up or whatever. I had an old CD Walkman with the foam headphones. And there was a movie going on. I was laying on the ground listening to a sermon that I had burned. I don't really fully remember if I burned the CD illegally, which would be kind of ironic, listening to a sermon that I got illegally on a CD. Anyway, I was listening to a John Piper sermon on Romans 1. And I just remember vividly just the phrase, God gave them over to their sin. That was mentioned a couple of times in that passage in Romans 1, 18 and following. And I was just listening to this sermon by John Piper. And it was the first time in my life where I felt God calling me into some kind of ministry life. Like I was always had this vision. I went to Notre Dame, as Ozzy said. I got a business degree from there. The next year I was taking a master's course of business. I was getting my master's degree for business. And I always thought after my career, I was going to, do something in business, go and make some money in the business world and, have a certain life that you were going to live. And here I'm sitting on this bus in Germany. And I just feel like God saying, no, you gotta, like, who's gonna speak for the guys that are on this bus with you? Who's gonna talk to the guys in the locker room that you've played with throughout your career? These guys live in a different world. It's hard to get access to them. They don't go to church. As I've already said, they live a life that's just chasing after things that aren't gonna last. And through that sermon, I just kept thinking, I don't want God to give them up. I don't want God to give up on my teammates. And so it was the first time in my life, I was like, man, maybe something in ministry is what I should be doing. It's the first time that God planted that little seed that maybe I should be pursuing after hockey, something different than business. So, and throughout all my time in Europe, that I played, Don's son, Don Jr., many of you know Don Jr. We became pretty close throughout my years when I first met him in college. And he would always say this. He would always tell me we could use a guy like you at Hockey Ministries. He would just always throw that line out almost every time we talked. And there was like, no, man, I'm not. When he first started saying, I was like, yeah, that's great. I'm probably not going to be with Hockey Ministries. I might be able to help you with some marketing or something because I was going to do business. But that bus trip, every time he said it after that, there was always this, you know what, maybe he's right. Maybe this is what I should be doing. And just over the course of the next year or 2 years, I just felt God calling me more and more after that bus trip in Germany. So that was a long-winded answer, Don, for that question. But
no, but you had a deep concern for your own teammates and for the world of hockey, and so that's awesome. So tell us now, Rob, what do you do now And
What do I do now?
what do you do?
Well, I try to keep guys like Billy on track, guys like Lori on track, keeping them doing what they're supposed to do, which is a full job in itself, obviously. But no, what I do now is I oversee our chapel operations at Hockey Ministry. So we have over 300 chapels operating across North America and a few in Europe. And we have a team of staff that oversee different aspects of that ministry, different leagues, and they're responsible for different things. So I basically sit above everything and kind of just manage everything and make sure everything's going okay, and just kind of globally with our chapel program during the year. So just making sure staff are doing what they're supposed to be doing and trying to grow the chapels and make sure, you know, the leagues like the NHL all the way down to youth teams are happy with the chapel and there's no problems. So just kind of overseeing all our chapel operations.
But Rob, as well, you are a chapel leader for some teams, right?
I also serve as a chaplain. Yes. Along with doing that, I serve as a chaplain for, it'll be 6 teams this season. So I'm serving with a couple college teams, handful of pro teams, and a youth team. So
how would you say, like in the NHL, let's say that, and in other leagues if you want, but how is the program going overall?
I've hinted at this, and you know, I think John hinted at it in his prayer a little bit. Like things are going well. It's different than 20, even 30 years ago. I think there's definitely more openness. And maybe Beau, when he shares to close, he's an NHL chaplain, an AHL chaplain. He can maybe share a little bit about his experience very briefly. But I think it's going well. There's an openness. There's more of an acceptance for things. There's also the challenge of, I mean, there's not an outright, like, most of the time we don't get a coach saying, yeah, get out of here, we don't want you, or a GM saying that. But there's still this resistance with guys. And I think more it's not so much just like an outright, like, we don't want this, you know, religious stuff, get out of here. It's more of guys are just so consumed, honestly, with themselves and what they're about and chasing after the next contract or whatever, that there's not a lot of time in their minds or their hearts for things of God. So there's still a struggle of having guys that are committed to the chapel program and wanting to grow in their faith. But overall, there's less resistance, if that makes sense. So it's been going good. And our chapel program at the NHL, AHL, all levels has been quite strong, in the sense that, you know, there's all but, I think, 5 or 6 teams in the NHL that have a chapel going. And even those teams that don't have an official chapel going, some of the guys meet away from the rink for coffee or whatever with the chaplain. So we're there, we're in the rinks, we're doing stuff. Sometimes it's under the radar, but it's grown a lot since it first started back in the day with you, Don. It's it's on a good solid footing.
Rob, there are a couple of guys on my screen near the bottom, Chuck Luxa and Gary Braun, who are very involved in our chapel program. Chuck is going to be our new guy in North Bay, so you guys will be connecting. And but so Rob, how would you identify then? You mentioned a little bit, but just where there is pushback, what do you think is behind the pushback that we get from time to time?
Well, I would say one of the big things that's behind pushback is this, coaches think that sometimes if coaches don't want the program, or a GM doesn't want the program, or a team in general doesn't want the chapel program, I think part of it is they think it's going to be a distraction. It is interesting. Like I said, the game has gotten better, but there is still, even like it was 50 years ago, this mentality that maybe if you are a Christian, you're going to be a little maybe softer. You're not going to be a quote unquote hockey guy. the Christian thing is going to be a distraction for the team. It's going to, it's going to provide a wedge for the team. And a lot of coaches, GMs don't want that. They want everything internal. They don't want guys being distracted by things of faith or getting distracted from their quote unquote job and what they're supposed to do. So we still fight that. But I would say, again, we fight, especially in the pro game. Like these guys, it's probably different from when a lot of you guys played, but these guys are getting, I mean, everybody's bending over backwards, doing whatever these guys, you want your skates tied, we'll tie your skates. I mean, it's not that far, but it's pretty close. Like these NHL guys, these pro guys get whatever they need. Everybody exists to serve them. The world revolves around them, and that's some of the danger that a lot of these guys start thinking, is they are the center of the universe, because that's kind of the world that they live in. The fans, the media all want them. They want their attention. Like I said, there's a staff, there's a nutritionist. I mean, there's any kind of thing that they might want or need, they have at their disposal, and it's all for them. So they get into this mentality that life is about them, that the world revolves around them. And I think that blinds a lot of guys to the reality that they need something that's outside of themselves, that they can't, that their life and their world should revolve around something greater than themselves. And it's a lot of guys, if you ask them that, they would say, oh no, I'm not selfish, or I don't, that's not me. But if you look at their life, that's how they are. And so I think when guys are confronted with something like the chapel program, where they are confronted with the truth that life is, there's a God who loves them, but our life should revolve around that God, not the other way around. God shouldn't revolve around us. I think guys have a hard time with that, and they have a hard time giving up some of the things, again, that make it their world, and instead give it up and go into God's world. So I think that's honestly one of the big things nowadays, where we face hesitancy, and just guys just don't want to come to chapel because they're so busy doing what they want to do for themselves, to be honest.
Thank you, Rob. And isn't it amazing, though, that despite all of that pushback, that God still is at work, and there are still players in that group and on that team whose lives God is at work within, right? And so you guys, as chaplains, faithfully bring the message and trust God that He'll do its work, right? His work. And
Right.
just before you introduce Beau, I wondered, is there one Bible passage or verse that sort of is a go-to verse for you?
It's been for a long time. It's very bad that I don't know the reference to this. I know it's in Matthew 26. I know that. I just don't know the exact verse reference. But it's Jesus. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's praying. It's the night that he's going to be betrayed, the day before he's going to be hung on a cross. He knows what's coming. His disciples are already starting to flake out on him. They're falling asleep. And Jesus is praying to the Father, and he's asking God to take this cup from him. He doesn't want to go through what he's about to go through. He knows what's coming. But then there's a phrase at the end of that. He says, Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me. And then he says, but not my will, yours be done. And to me, that just little phrase right there is what that's the verse that I try to think about almost every day, because I think it's a challenge, not only for me, but for everybody. Saying to yourself, not my will, but yours be done, God, is a hard thing at times. And it's something that I try to remind myself of constantly. So I would say that Matthew 26, if somebody knows it, maybe it's 49 or something like that. Somebody knows the reference, but
39.
There you go. Thanks, Baxi.
Well, thank you, Rob. Boy, just awesome what has done and is doing in your life and through your life. And so we thank you for many of these guys here were there in the early days of chapels in hockey, and some even before there were chapels. And so it's great to hear all that's happening and all the good things. And so thank you for listening and for following God's call in your life. And you've blessed us today, Rob. And so I'll allow you now to introduce Beau.
Beau is a longtime hockey ministries chaplain. Like he said, for those guys who are on the call, he lives in Tucson. And he's done the Tucson Roadrunners for a while, and he was also the chaplain for the Arizona Coyotes for a bit before they decided to move up to Utah. But Beau decided to stay on as chaplain. He is a skier, so he likes to ski, and he travels up to Utah and still does the chapel there and meets with the guys there. So he's a pastor, and he's married, and he's also I don't think he'll have enough time to touch on this, but he's head of a ministry that deals with and helps people with addiction, especially addiction to sexually related things like porn and stuff like that. So he does that ministry. He's a pastor, and he's a chaplain for us with Hockey Ministries, and one of our best. He's honestly one of our best. It's he reports, he communicates, he does everything that you can ask for as a chaplain. So we don't always have guys like that, and so having Beau as not only a good chaplain but a good colleague and coworker is always nice. So I'll let you take it from here, Beau.
Honored, Rob. What a blessing it is to be a part of HMI. I mean, I just love it. I grew up by Inglewood, by the Forum in Los Angeles, and growing up French Canadian in that area. My dad loved Marcel Dion, loved Rogie Vachon. My dad would go to the practices just to speak French Canadian with Marcel, and it was beautiful. So for me to be a chaplain is absolutely mind-boggling. If you would have told me that I would be able to share Jesus with hockey players in my life, it would have been a dream come true. And both my parents, before they died, were able to see me minister to hockey players, and they both were absolutely just tickled by what was happening. So thank you, Rob, for that intro. Big blessing. And I just want to encourage everybody too, is that, down in Tucson in the AHL, our chapel is like 15 players. I mean, it is strong. And it's been strong for years. And even in Utah, it is a strong chapel, and I think, if you're just kind of consistent and, kind of faithful, as a chaplain, and obviously you're kind and, you're loving and patient, there's incredible open doors. I concur with Rob there, and I'm from, of course, my parents are from Maine, but I'm from Los Angeles. But, Canadians and, Swedish folk and people from, Russia, they're not quite as, if you will, Pentecostal about their faith as others. And so you kind of got to take that into account too, is there's kind of a little bit of a docile kind of vibe, that you get with, what I find with people from Europe and Canadians. But anyway, I'm here to give you guys a devotion. So I'm going to share from the book of Romans. And this is, the holy, amazing book of Romans. And this is Romans chapter 2. And this is verse 4. It says, "Don't you see how wonderful, kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that his kindness is intended to turn you from your sin?" This would probably be a passage that I would use in a chapel, with the guys, just to talk a little bit about this. One of the unique things about this passage and just the Bible in general is when it talks about like how wonderfully kind and tolerant and patient God is. It's not just speaking that God is like out there and he just tells us to be kind, tolerant, and patient. But the unique thing about the Bible is that God would demonstrate his kindness and his tolerance and his patience with us on the planet. And that's unique. I don't know how many people realize just how unique the scriptures are about this, that God, there's many kind of ideas of, God saying, hey, don't do this and do this. But the unique thing about the Bible is that God literally comes to the planet to be an example of being kind, tolerant, and patient. So God doesn't just tell us to do it, but he shows us how to do it. He literally is the greatest. It's like when we're learning how to, hit a hockey puck, and we need someone to show us how to hold the stick. We need to have someone who shows us like where it's supposed to go on the blade, everything like this to have a good release. And that's the neat thing about the Bible is that God doesn't just say, hey, be patient, be kind, this kind of thing. But he goes, I'm going to show you literally how to do this. And it just reminds us this morning that, or for me, it's 6:46 a.m. So it's morning. But it reminds me that, we have the greatest example of really how to do it and how to do things well. We don't have to kind of wonder, what the example is. We can just look to Jesus and go, man, what is it like to be kind? What is it like to be tolerant? God certainly has put up with me and he puts up with you and he doesn't just put up with us, but he's patient with us. He's kind with us. And I just love that. So I find that to be something that I could always hold on to in a day is that, God is that example of being kind, tolerant, and patient. And I have to ask a question, and that is my character developing these qualities in my life? Am I stagnant in my walk with God, or am I developing, kindness? Am I developing, bearing long with people, tolerance, being able to suffer long with people, bear with them, am I developing that patience that's needed? And this is what God has given me. And am I able to develop that in my life where that's being seen by my wife, or that's being seen? I've been married 32 years, being, seen in my, my relationship with my kids. My kids are 31 and 24. So I'm in my mid 50s. I'm kind of old school now, I guess. But, I ask those questions daily. Is that character of Christ affecting me? And is that what I'm bringing into the hockey arena too? Is that kind of character? Am I appreciative of those qualities? And then I think of things like this. This latter part of the text says, can't you see that it's his kindness that is intended to turn you from your sin? That, what really brought me to a relationship with Jesus? I grew up very secular, very progressive, very atheist. My dad was a Marxist, very aggressive against Christianity. And when I think of what brought me to faith in Jesus, it was that I couldn't believe that someone would love me like this. I couldn't believe that God could take some Southern California kid born in North Hollywood and do something and give him purpose and meaning. and dreams and, opportunity to prosper and that I could perhaps maybe be in heaven one day. That was unbelievable that God could be that kind to someone who had such bitter hatred, towards God. And, it reminds me that there's players and there's people that don't have a kindness towards God. That they struggle in what they think about the deity. And it reminds me that it's going to be the kindness of Christ in me that needs to come out and minister to them and meet them wherever they're at. That they see the goodness and the kindness of God in me and that patience and tolerance. And so that they get ministered to and they go, whoa, man, perhaps God would love someone like me. And hockey players are like other people in that we all sin and we all struggle with sin, various sins. And a lot of players feel ashamed, and that's probably why they don't go to chapel. They're a little scared about, what they're going to hear and things like that. But to be able to meet them in the hall or meet them in a coffee room or something like that, and just kind of love on them and share your vulnerabilities and a little bit of your story and a little bit of your stuff, and they go, "Oh my gosh, you're just like me," And then they start wanting to go to chapel. They want to be around you. They know it's okay. You have a kindness in your heart because there's a vulnerability too in your life. There's something you're expressing yourself in a very vulnerable way to them. And, you're not coming off hard and just strong. And, that's what they get probably from their coaching and from their staff and all that, is that kind of really hard thing, And so I think about that reminder of just how can players be turned, from darkness into light. And it's going to be through, like it says in this passage, the kindness that is intended to turn you from your sin, And then last thing I'll leave you guys with is just, if you made a list of people in your life who have been kind, tolerant with you, and patient with you, and just the impact that they made in your life, man, that might be an amazing list, of people that we become appreciative of. And we kind of go, wow, yeah, my life was impacted by people like this. People that were patient, and that gave me opportunity, and it opened up a door for me. And all these little links, joined together led me to a strong relationship with Jesus. And, that kind of, thinking and inventory in our life can really build an appreciation that overflows in our life as we, attempt to minister to others, with that love of Christ. So I love the passage. I'll read it one more time and I'll be done. It says, "Don't you see how wonderful, kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that his kindness is intended to turn you from your sin?" So, amen.